She clutched her 6-month-old baby tightly, her heart pounding as the officer's voice grew louder, his face inches from hers. In a split second, everything changed. His hands gripped her shoulders, slamming her against the wall with such force that her baby slipped from her arms, screaming as it hit the floor. The room froze, but the fury in her eyes burned hotter than ever. Wherever you're watching from, whether it's Chicago, London, New York, or any city across the USA or UK, this story demands your attention. Share it, talk about it, and let's uncover the truth together. She was Latasha Williams, a 29-year-old single mother living in a modest apartment in Southside Chicago. Latasha had always been a fighter, raising her son, Malik, alone while working 2 jobs to keep food on the table. Her life wasn't easy, but she carried herself with pride, her warm smile masking the exhaustion of her daily grind. On the evening of July 14, 2025, she was at home, rocking Malik to sleep, when a loud knock rattled her door. It was 8:47 p.m., and she wasn't expecting anyone. They were 2 police officers, Officer Daniel Harris and Officer Michael Reed, responding to a noise complaint from a neighbor. The complaint was vague, something about loud music, but Latasha hadn't been playing anything. She opened the door, Malik cradled in her arms and greeted the officers politely, though her gut told her something was off. Harris, a tall man with a stern jaw, led the conversation, his tone sharp from the start. Reed stood back, quieter but watching closely, his hand resting near his holster. Latasha explained there was no music, no party, just her and her baby. She invited them to look around, hoping to clear up the misunderstanding. But Harris's demeanor didn't soften. He stepped inside, his boots heavy on her worn carpet, and began questioning her about her neighbors, her schedule, even her son's father. Latasha answered calmly, though her patience was thinning. She didn't know why this felt like an interrogation. He raised his voice first. Harris demanded to know why she was being difficult, though Latasha hadn't raised her tone. She stood her ground, holding Malik closer, and asked why they were still there if the complaint was baseless. That's when Harris's face hardened. "You don't get to question me," he snapped, stepping closer. Latasha instinctively backed up, her shoulder brushing the wall behind her. Malik stirred, sensing the tension. They were nose to nose now, Harris towering over her. Reed, still silent, shifted his weight but didn't intervene. Latasha's voice trembled, not from fear but from anger. "I'm not doing anything wrong," she said, her words steady despite the shake in her hands. "I just want you to leave us alone." Harris's eyes narrowed, and before she could react, his hands shot out, grabbing her shoulders. With a sudden, violent shove, he slammed her into the wall. The impact was so hard her head snapped back, and Malik slipped from her arms, tumbling to the floor with a piercing scream. She gasped, her body frozen for a moment as Malik's cries filled the room. Her knees hit the ground as she scrambled to her baby, her hands shaking as she checked him for injuries. "My baby," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. Harris stood over her, unmoving, his face a mix of shock and defiance. Reed finally stepped forward, muttering something about calming down, but Latasha wasn't listening. Her world was Malik, crying in her arms, and the rage boiling inside her. She didn't stay silent. Latasha's voice rose, raw and unfiltered, as she demanded answers. "Why would you do that? He's a baby," she shouted, clutching Malik to her chest. Harris didn't back down. He claimed she was resisting, that she'd made a threatening move, but Latasha knew it was a lie. There were no weapons, no threats, just a mother protecting her child. Reed, now visibly uncomfortable, suggested they leave, but Harris wasn't done. He accused Latasha of escalating the situation, his words dripping with authority. They argued back and forth, the air thick with tension. Latasha's neighbor, Mrs. Carter, an elderly woman who'd heard the commotion, cracked her door open and saw everything. She called out, "You leave that girl alone," but Harris ignored her, his focus locked on Latasha. He radioed for backup, claiming he needed assistance with an uncooperative suspect. Latasha's heart sank as she realized this wasn't ending quietly. Minutes later, 2 more officers arrived and the situation spiraled. They tried to cuff Latasha, but she refused to let go of Malik, who was still whimpering. "I'm not leaving my son," she yelled, her voice breaking. The officers hesitated, but Harris pushed forward, insisting she was a danger. Mrs. Carter, now standing in the hallway, started recording on her phone, her hands shaking but her resolve firm. "This ain't right," she kept saying, her voice a lifeline for Latasha. He, Harris, seemed unfazed by the growing crowd of neighbors gathering outside. He barked orders, his authority unchallenged by his colleagues. But Latasha's fury was unstoppable. She demanded their badge numbers, their names, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You don't get to hurt my baby and walk away," she said, her eyes locked on Harris. For a moment he faltered, but only for a moment. They eventually left, but not before issuing Latasha a citation for disorderly conduct. She stood in her doorway, Malik finally calming in her arms, as the officers drove off. Mrs. Carter hugged her, promising to share the video. "We'll make this right," she whispered. Latasha nodded, but inside she was shaking, with fear, with anger, and with a determination to fight back. She didn't let it end there. Latasha took Malik to the hospital that night, where doctors confirmed he had no serious injuries, just bruises and a scare that would haunt her forever. But the real twist came the next morning when Mrs. Carter's video went viral. Posted on X, it spread like wildfire, showing Harris's aggression and Latasha's desperate pleas. The comments poured in, some calling for justice, others spewing hate, but the truth was undeniable. The video showed a mother slammed against a wall, her baby falling, and an officer who didn't flinch. They, the community, rallied behind Latasha. Protests erupted outside the Chicago Police Department, with signs reading "Justice for Latasha and Malik." Local activists helped her file a formal complaint, and lawyers reached out, offering to take her case pro bono. Harris was placed on administrative leave, but for Latasha it wasn't enough. She spoke at a press conference, her voice steady now, Malik in her arms. "This isn't just about me," she said. "It's about every mother, every child who deserves to feel safe in their own home." He, Harris, remained silent, but the pressure was mounting. Reed, the quieter officer, came forward days later, admitting he should have intervened. His statement, leaked to the press, added fuel to the public outcry. The department promised an investigation, but Latasha wasn't holding her breath. She knew the system too well. This is where you come in. From Los Angeles to Manchester, from Atlanta to Birmingham, this story isn't just Latasha's. It's a call to action. Share her story, demand accountability, check X for updates on her case, and join the fight for justice. Because no mother should ever have to pick her screaming baby off the floor while the world looks the other way.